Hey everyone, welcome back to another one of my videos. My name is Deliora, and today we are going to be talking about a story that's very near and dear to my heart. Specifically, it's about a group of OCs and a comic that I have been writing since middle school, or at least conceptualizing since middle school. And this is with Caspin, Callum, Joel, Neil, and last but not least, Juniper. So let's get into the art. Here's some comic pages that I've done over the years with them. Some are good, some are not so good. A lot of these I did for a like college level art class, and it was received pretty well. And I also didn't finish some of them. Like, really didn't finish some of them. But I wanted to, make a video commemorating these, because although it probably won't be a real comic, I love these characters very much. So, the first one is a parody of this. Let's get into it. So, the world in which these OCs exist is pretty, it's a high fantasy, but also high fantasy is a very broad, kind of term. It's a world where it's very D&D, Lord of the Rings, and isekai inspired, but not the gross ones. However, this would definitely be in a modern, I guess, AU, alternate universe, that they would be in. And a lot of the art pieces I'm going to show specifically, I just wanted to focus on characterization and showing their personalities through the art, because obviously I can show you a random picture and be like, this person is like this. But I feel like specifically my art is the most, the best when my characters are very expressive, or at least are somewhat expressive. So let's, I guess, talk more about them. So the story is going to start out specifically with Callum and Caspin, who are twins, and essentially they belong to a kingdom where there's currently a war going on with another kingdom. Or not really, it's more of a Cold War, because no actual fighting has been happening, but they constantly are receiving news about what this other kingdom is doing, and it's not great. It's not great what they're doing, and Callum and Caspin have never really been guys who just kind of sit and do nothing. They are very they're not good at that. So they essentially set off to try to do something about it. Initially, they just start off as wanting to help the people who are being affected by these things, but it slowly turns into a full-on rebellion, and they slowly get more, I guess, party members as they go on. Specifically, Neil is the first one they manage to join up with, then Joel, then Juniper. So, yeah. I guess I can talk more about their individual personalities. So Caspin, who is the one driving in this illustration, is kind of I don't really, he's a pretty chill dude. For the most part, he's just kind of the protective friend. He's not overly protective. He's more hey, you might want to think about that a little bit before you do it. I guess cautious is probably a good word for it. But he's also extremely passionate and extremely he doesn't like to just stand and let things happen, and neither does his brother. In fact, he really only, started this because Callum was we gotta do something, and he was yeah, you're right, what would we do? And then they went from there. So Callum and Caspin, again, are twins. They grew up in kind of a random just village on the outskirts of the land of the kingdom. And so they were kind of closer to where things were starting to get worse, because it was kind of in the no man's land where this other kingdom had started to invade, where things were starting to get worse. They were hearing more about it than someone in, like, the capital of their kingdom would have. But yeah, their upbringing was honestly pretty good. Like, nothing really awful happened, other than that they did lose their father when they were both, like, 13. But that's because he was a soldier, and, you know, that just happens sometimes. But yeah, here's the final illustration for this one. This is just a very self-indulgent piece. It's not really that good in quality, but I thought the original picture was really funny, so I wanted to base it off that. This one is much more, I think, showcasing what the actual story would have in it, you know, as they're traveling and such. I guess we can talk more about Neil now. Neil is a half-blood. Specifically, he is a snowy owl. I'm so good at talking. I hope you guys enjoy me just talking your ear off extremely badly. But yeah, he is a snowy owl half-blood, so he has wings and kind of like... I know that birds don't really traditionally have, like, ears, but I like to have... It's just something there. If you look at my art, I almost always give characters, like, elf ears or some sort of pointy ears, so they ended up getting feather ears in the, like, avian half-blood designs. And Joel's also a half-blood, but we'll get into him more later. So Neil specifically is someone who was in the more, like, I guess, richer or, like, suburban part of the kingdom. Not really, again, in the capital, but in one of the more well-off towns that Callum and Caspian go to get supplies and such. They find Neil, who is this, I mean, I guess if I had to describe him, he would be a wizard in D&D, he lives in a library with his adoptive parents, and obviously Neil is also... He's extremely intelligent, he knows how to read maps, he knows how to make maps, he's overall just a very smart guy, but with not a ton of life experience. Like, he's never really traveled at all, he kind of just, like, why would he need to? Because he has all of these books and such, and he's very much like the classic, like, oh, bookworm who doesn't get out a lot, or doesn't have friends. He's very much that trope, but I mean, I love him, so I don't really mind him being pretty based on a trope. But he's also, like, he's pretty stubborn, and over the course of the story, he kind of realizes his faults because of the privilege of where he grew up. He kind of realizes that, oh, half-bloods are not treated very nicely in other places. He especially realizes this when they finally meet Joel, who is in a very terrible situation. I guess the best way I could describe it is in Thor Ragnarok. I can't say that word for whatever reason. Where they're being, like, forced to fight for rich people's amusement. That is essentially where they find Joel, and then they're kind of like, hey, you're really strong, and we just have a magic bird man and two kind of strong guys. I'm really good at talking. So yeah, they end up recruiting him and freeing a lot of the people who are also fighting in this, I guess, like, arena, which, you know, the people who are invested in it don't really like that, so they make quite a few people mad over the course of the story, and again, I would love to make this into a comic one day. However, making comic pages is really hard, so, you're probably gonna get a lot of art of them, but probably not a ton of, but I really wouldn't hold your breath if you're hoping or looking for a comic about these characters. Again, because I just don't think I'm talented enough, to do comic stuff, but, you know, characterization pages like this are, a lot easier, and they convey, you know, they also just, they make me happy, so I'm probably gonna stick with that. But, yeah, so they end up, kind of just adopting Joel because he really, really didn't have anything else kind of going for him. He was just kind of like, it was either he went with them and kind of tried to destroy the things that led to him literally being born into like the fighting ring that he was in, or he could kind of just try to survive on his own, which it really wasn't much of an option, but you know, it's not like they're bad to him or anything. He does kind of have a brother relationship with Neil where they are constantly kind of just bickering, and they like to fight, but in a very like sibling, like, oh, I hate you but I love you kind of way. And they do eventually join up with June after some very like plot important things that I will probably talk about in a different video. But essentially they were both being chased by the same group and they joined up after that. So yeah, then they continue to travel because, again, they are slowly recruiting people to kind of be, again, like in a resistance that's essentially led by them, but they're not really like leading it strategically. They're more showing people like, hey, it's okay to rise up and you can like find a place in rising up against them. And then, you know, they slowly defeat the big bad, and I did do an OC animatic of specifically June, because June is definitely a character that I'm probably the most invested in, at least out of these OCs. Like, I love her so much. I love all of them. However, if I had a favorite child, it would probably be June. Yeah, overall, I really like how this piece turned out, actually. I've been doing a lot more heavily, like, illustrated pieces as of late, and I mean, I'm personally really enjoying them. I like how they're turning out and such, so it's definitely not the worst. I guess I could talk more about June's character, although a lot of it is kind of, like, I don't want to spoil anything. Not that anyone cares about these OCs but me. But you know, if you people ever do end up, like, having a vested interest in the story, I don't want to immediately just, like, info dump everything, but again, due to very plot-relevant circumstances, they're being chased down by the same group of people from the other kingdom, and she slowly gets to essentially, like, trust these guys, which, you know, isn't easy to do when you're running away from a group of people, but she slowly gets to, like, trust these guys, and it's very much like the found family thing, because even though, like, most of these characters didn't really have, like, a great family dynamic. Kellum and Caspin lost their dad, and then their mom died when they essentially turned 18. Joel was separated from his parents because of the fighting ring issues. Neil had adoptive parents who were very supportive, and they were very lovely lads. I love them. Oh, Neil has two dads. I don't know if that's important, but he does. And yeah, also Caspin very much has a crush on June. I'm really bad at talking today. I am so sorry. Also sorry for this being a kind of a random upload. I went on a very long trip, and then I was very burnt out after the trip, so I needed some time to settle down, and I couldn't really even think about trying to get this out before I left. So you're just gonna have to deal with the late upload. But yeah, again, this piece was really important for me to show a lot of characterization through. I just wanted it to, I don't know, I wanted it to really show off their different personalities in how they're eating and how they're interacting and everything. So yeah. I mean, I guess I could just, like, go off about the art more, or I could continue to talk about June, which I'll probably talk about June more, because I love her. So June is unable to use magic. Neil's the only magic user that they really have. Technically, Joel uses magic, but he has a magical weapon, so it's not really the same as Neil literally being a wizard who can cast spells. And then Caspin and Callum are both, like, I would say that they're fighters, again, in D&D terms. Like, they have essentially no magic at all, but they both have their own skills. Such as Callum is just a super friendly goofball who is very, very Luffy inspired. Because I don't think I've even talked about it. I'm a huge One Piece fan. I have been since I was like 11, I think. I love that show so much. So yeah, Callum is pretty Luffy inspired, who's just Goku inspired, and then, you know, there's a lot of just similarities in shonen protagonists in general. And then obviously that's based off of Sun Wukong from Journey to the West, but I'll probably get into that in another video. Because I love tropes where it like actually goes into like exploring the anime and such. I am on such a ramble. But yeah, he's like a guy who loves food. He's very friendly. He's not quite as dim-witted as I think like anime shonen protagonists specifically tend to be. But like he's a pretty just goofy guy. And I think that's fun because I think a lot of the other characters are pretty serious, but Callum is definitely more of like a like he's the glue, fun-loving, like is very passionate about his cause, but would prefer to do it in like the least harmful way possible. Like he doesn't actually really want to hurt anyone unless they try to hurt him first. Like he's not a very not proactive, but just like he's not gonna harm someone unless they actively are trying to like get at him or his friends. Like he's not a guy who kind of like seeks out stuff like that. Joel, on the other hand, is very happy with taking kind of bloody justice into his own hands. He's a character with a lot of anger issues, which, you know, he slowly realizes that, hey, I don't need to be angry at the world, but I can be angry at the reasons why I was harmed, kind of way. Again, they all end up going through, like, really big character arcs over what would probably be a very long story. Again, One Piece inspired, so it's just gonna go on forever. And, like, I have most of it scribbled down in just various sketchbooks. Also, I promise I'm gonna get a sketchbook tour out soon. I know I said in, like, my very first video that I wanted to do a sketchbook tour, but I don't currently have a camera that I can really do that with. My phone camera is awful, and then I edit all my videos on an iPad, so that would also not be great. I don't know. I'll figure it out. But yeah, essentially they all go through really long character arcs as they're traveling. And again, like, a lot of the story focuses on, like, the overarching plot, but I also really want this story to be about the familial relationships that they have. And kind of, like, the dynamics. Again, like, how Joel and Neil kind of, like, they bond over the fact that both are looked down upon due to them being half-bloods. And they kind of have, like, I wouldn't call it, it's not a trauma bond, but it's like a understanding between them of, hey, we've both gone through a lot of awful things because of us being half-bloods, and they kind of take that in stride and are able to be like, hey, this is messed up, but we can change it, and we're trying to change it, kind of thing. I also really hope this doesn't sound like an English essay of me, like, summarizing a book, because I don't want my videos to sound, like, super boring, and I'm always worried that they do sound boring. But if you guys like this more kind of, like, ranty, just art footage based instead of me actually, like, talking about the art more, then, please tell me. Let's see. But yeah. And then Callum and Caspin are obviously twins, so they have that kind of, like, family bond, but also, like, they're siblings. They're gonna fight. They disagree. most of their like values are the same, but again, the way they go about it can be very different. And then June doesn't really like she doesn't really have that sense of a family, but she's always really wanted one. And then she gets accepted into this group who is actively trying to do so much good, and she just wants to help them as much as she can. But she also feels like she's not very good at it because, you know, she can't use magic. She's not very physically strong. And she is smart, but like she's not as smart as Neil. Like she does have a bit of like an inferiority issue sometimes, but I mean, she ends up being really important, especially in the later chapters. Again, that do not exist. None of these things exist, except for, again, in really bad sketchbook sketches and in my brain. So, you know, I mean, once I end up doing a sketchbook tour, I would love to rant more about the actual story, because at one point I had a very basic plan of the story completely like sketched out. Like they were bad like thumbnail sketches, but it was like completely sketched out with dialogue notes and everything. I guess we could talk more about their designs themselves. Most of their designs are pretty simple. I think that June's is probably the most complicated, maybe Neil's being second, just because Neil has like the teal and brown hair, and that's something that like is kind of not difficult to draw. Like it's not hard to do, but it's definitely more complicated than just Joel has dark brown hair and I can just color that in pretty easily. And then June has like a multicolored skirt, and again, it's pretty simple, but she also has her the bandages over her face, which if you watch my OC animatic, you know what those are hiding, but yeah. That video is very much kind of spoiling an important part, but it's also very self-indulgent, and I love it. It's just for fun, like, yeah, so, I guess I can talk more about the characterization of this piece. I put a lot of focus into specifically how they were eating, because I wanted it to show through their personalities a lot. Like, Joel is kind of like overindulging in his food and is like specifically eating a lot of meat. Like, Joel, despite being a half bull, is like not vegetarian at all. He loves eating meat. So he has like a full big mug, and like he's clearly eaten multiple, I guess, like chicken wings. Like they're not chicken wings, but they are, you know? Caspin has like barely touched his food because he's kind of distracted while he's eating. June has kind of eaten a bit of everything, and she has like every single sauce that she's trying, and she's currently making Caspin try some. Poor Neil is currently having his food stolen, but you can see that he like put a handkerchief, like a napkin, in his shirt. He has like his stuff fully set out. He's drinking tea. Like he's a very fancy guy. Like he likes to be sophisticated and like more, I don't know, like he likes to eat in a very specific way. And then Callum, being a messy guy, just completely has food on his face. He got crumbs all over the table. He's finished his food and is just straight up stealing his friend's food. You know, a lot of this, I mean, I hope it portrays some of their character. Whether it does or not, I have no idea. I don't know if anyone understands what this is. I mean, I've shown it to some of my friends and they thought it was cool, but, you know, it's just the internet think it's cool. I guess we'll figure it out when I post this. But yeah, this, again, I don't think this story is ever going to be a comic or like a TV show or anything. I don't think it's ever going to get to that point, just because that takes a lot of resources I do not have. I just love my little guys and I wanted to talk about them, because if they can't ever exist in any other form, I mean, I hope you guys enjoy them in this form. And I also just really love this piece, and I hope you guys do too. And that is the end of the video. This has been really long, but I really hoped you guys liked it. Thank you so much for watching my videos and staying. Again, I hope you really like the art. And here's just some other art because I get to. Like I said, Neil and June are probably the characters I draw, like, the most. So I just wanted to showcase some of the other art I've done. And specifically, you should really go check out the OC animatic that I did. I'm very proud of it. It took forever. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Bye!